Good evening. It's 7 o'clock, so I will call this meeting to order. I did get a phone call at the last minute from our treasurer apologizing, had an emergency of sorts arise, and she said she wasn't going to be able to make it. So I hope everybody asked their questions of her in advance. I know several people did ask her several questions, so she will not be with us tonight. First order of business is the pledge to the flag. I've muted the panelists and I'll ask everyone to join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, let's see, we're up to 13 attendees now. Welcome to everyone who's joining us tonight. We appreciate your spending your evening with us. Next order of business is the minutes of our April 26th meeting. Were there any corrections or additions to those minutes? I guess you have to unmute yourselves. I don't see a button that says unmute. Okay. Were there any corrections or additions to the minutes of April 26th? Hearing none, could I have a motion that they be approved as written?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Raymond. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Trustee Fitzpatrick. Any discussion?
Yes, I'd just like to put on the record that I checked my files and I did not submit the Saranac Lake code for recommendation to the board. I submitted the Revenue Committee's recommendation for that code. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Those minutes are approved. Moving on to mayor announcements. On the Front Street closure question, I did receive additional responses to the questionnaire that was distributed to the residents and the businesses in that block that would be affected. We're now up to 12 responses total. And of those, 8 would support closing 3 nights a week like we did last year. 1 would support closing more often than that. None would support closing for the entire summer. And 3 would not support any closing at all. All of the 12, without exception, expressed concerns about parking, and the business owners expressed concerns about easy access to their businesses. I talked to 5 restaurants personally. Jeff talked to the 6th. And of those, only the Front Street Deli and Next Door expressed an interest in expanded sidewalk use. So it looks like we will not need to have pedestrian access in the street anywhere except for those 2 places. And given the width of the street and the concerns that were expressed to me about parking, I would suggest that we leave the street open 2 ways and leave all the parking spaces accessible, except the ones that are necessary for going around those 2 establishments down at the end of the block. Any objection to that?
It sounds like a reasonable, so they would put their barriers and use the parking spaces in front of their facility, in front of Next Door and Front Street, so that people could utilize the sidewalk?
No, they would use the sidewalk, and I would have DPW install ramps and concrete barriers so that the pedestrians could go around. Because otherwise you've got the pedestrians walking through an area that has servers and alcohol being carried back and forth and stuff like that. So it really doesn't work.
Well, I think that would be better to, to make pedestrians go around. I mean, plenty of street dining I've seen has them putting tables in the parking spaces and people walk through. I think,
Well, yeah, my only concern there is we were also crafting other legislation that said that we were going to provide room on the sidewalk for pedestrian travel. And so unless we consider this a temporary situation, and so because it's temporary, we're going to waive that. I guess my thoughts are basically, if this is a one-time thing, that's fine. But I wouldn't propose we continue to do it like that, because we're crafting legislation that specifically said that the restaurants needed to provide a travel way on the sidewalk from the curb in towards the storefront for pedestrians. So we'd be in conflict with those two that law and this setup. But obviously, we may not do this again come next year. But if we're going to continue to do this on an annual basis, then we should probably conform to the other legislation we were drafting.
Yeah, this motion that was passed at the last meeting was specific to this summer, and we don't currently have that law written or approved. So this would be purely a temporary thing. And once we get the legislation in place, then that would supersede in the future.
yeah, I think it's better not to impose on pedestrians to go around barriers and have ramps and all that. We can avoid all of that just by having a nice, we can even do a wider, say 5-foot pedestrian way. And we don't have that much foot traffic that I think it's going to be an issue with servers, running into folks. And I suggest we try it that way. It's less work. The restaurant's responsible for putting the barrier around their parking area, correct?
No, I mean, we would have to put some sort of barriers around their parking area.
But why don't we try it that way? And then,
They would have to put barriers between the dining area and the pedestrian area
why would they?
because they're serving alcohol.
Yeah, that can simply be a little mobile fence or anything. It's just they have to enclose their dining area.
Yeah, but I mean, currently, people put tables out and people walk through. That's what, Iron Roost does that. And it doesn't seem to be an issue. And if you have to put a, fence-like thing for alcohol, I don't see, that's being a big deal.
I can double check with the,
I don't see a difference in as far as the difficulty. Now, is this a 3-day a week, or are we going to keep this permanent throughout the summer?
the motion that was passed at our last meeting was permanently until October 1st.
Okay,
Yes.
so,
And DPW is not going to be moving concrete barriers twice a day.
no. So, yeah, my thoughts, if you're gonna do ramps and have the pedestrian way go around those two locations, I don't see, as far as DPW, that it's 6 one, half dozen the other. So I don't have an issue with that. Again, once we have legislation passed, as Liz said, the Iron Roost isn't going to be able to do what she said, because the curb, we have to provide pedestrian egress from the curb in. So we can't have tables on both sides. So I guess my thoughts are, if they want to do that this way, for 1 year, I don't see a problem with it.
Why don't we, since we did make and pass a motion at our last meeting, why don't we just ponder this during the rest of the meeting, and maybe under other business, we can revisit it at the end and see if people have thoughts. But that's the model that has emerged as the consensus of the restaurants in that block. So, and I didn't match what we passed, so I wanted to bring it back to you and let you know what the discussion was.
So
Second, now,
Mayor, your respondents who were they? Were they the restaurant owners those 12?
Yes.
They were all they were restaurant people. Okay.
oh, the 12 that answered the questionnaire,
Yeah.
they were mixed. Most of them were residents, but some of them were business owners of businesses that do not serve food.
Mhm. Okay.
Second announcement, the Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring a 2021 campaign to support small independent businesses in the village of Ballston Spa, the town of Ballston, and the town of Milton. And under this campaign, anyone who spends $20.21 or more in a local non-franchised business can send a photo of the receipt to the Chamber of Commerce and get entered into a weekly drawing. And the Chamber will draw names every week and award gift certificates to other local businesses to the winners. The Chamber is looking for donations to finance their purchase of these gift certificates. And this will probably start sometime in June, however long it takes them to get up and running. All we have to do is to let people know about it. There's no commitment on our part to do anything or to pay anything. It's simply an attempt on the part of the Chamber of Commerce to assist local businesses that might have been hurt by the pandemic. So I think we all appreciate that gesture very much, and I'll give you further updates as I learn of them. Third, we've had a request from Dish Network, I think it is. The young people in my office seem to know what that was, but I do not. To rent space on the John Street water tank. They're only asking for 35 square feet, which is a pretty small area, so I'm not sure exactly. I haven't seen any drawings or any plans or anything yet. I just got this request and wanted to let you know it was in the works. And they're offering $950 a month rental for that 35 square feet. So I forwarded this request to our attorney, engineer, building inspector, and Department of Public Works, and asked for their review and comments before I get back to the company. If I hear positive reviews from those people and it looks feasible, then I will tell the company to go ahead and get us a proposal with drawings and a contract and all that kind of stuff for your review. General announcement for the community. The collection of loose yard waste at the curb continues through the month of May. The last day to put stuff out this year will be May 31st, which is Memorial Day, a Monday. So DPW will do one additional sweep the first week in June to pick up anything that was put out over Memorial Day weekend. And after that, everything will have to be bagged until the fall cleanup starts. Next, more good news. As of Friday, 82% of all water accounts that have missed 2 or more readings have been resolved. So DPW continues to make excellent progress there, and we're closing in on having them all done, hopefully very soon. And last, I have had several inquiries about the Kelly Park Playground, and I'm sure you have had questions as well. We are planning to open that this summer. As you know, DPW has finished the repairs of the vandalism that was done recently at that site, and they're now doing routine maintenance and getting the place ready to open. We're in the process of trying to get a playground inspector to come in and give it a formal inspection to let us know if we missed anything. And when all of that is concluded, which will hopefully be in the next couple of weeks, that playground will be open for the summer. And that's,
Mayor,
yes.
I recall, it's been a while since I've been down there, but I recall there was one feature within the playground, which was basically a walking bridge that was made of essentially the same material you put on a rubber conveyor belt. And in the past, that had been cut and removed. I was just wondering if that had been replaced.
I don't know. I haven't been down there personally. I asked Jeff to get me a complete list of what needs to be done. And I also asked, who did I ask? One of the organizers who I ran into on the street the other day to go down there and take a look around and get me a list of whatever needed to be done. So I'm expecting to ask DPW to do everything that's on those two lists before we bring in the inspector.
Excuse me, Larry, are the restrooms in Kelly Park open, or are there porta potties when the park is in session?
They will be open. They're currently locked up.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another issue that we have to resolve, is our restroom cleaner resigned. So we got to find somebody new to clean those restrooms.
Okay.
But they will be open when the playground is open.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, moving on to old business. First item of old business is to continue our discussion of the revisions to Chapter 174, which is streets and sidewalks. We had a couple of meetings about this in February, and then we took a break. I'm hoping we can get back to it tonight. We were discussing two things. We were discussing the existing language in Chapter 174, and we were discussing the possibility of adding to it another section on sidewalk dining and vending. And that's what Trustee Raymond was referring to a few minutes ago. So that part is not up for discussion tonight. Hopefully we'll get to that next time. Tonight, I'm hoping that we can wrap up the revisions to the existing language. And our attorney distributed a copy of the latest set of changes that we discussed in February last week for the board to review. So I would suggest that we just go paragraph by paragraph. It's a short law, and take any additional comments, suggestions, discussion, and the attorney can, as she has done in the past, take notes and mark her copy up and then get us another version. I'm thinking that we've got several things in the works here that will probably wait and have one public hearing, one newspaper advertisement, and one submission to the state in about a month or so after we finish the 4 things, I think it is, that we've got in the works that I'm hoping we can wrap up in the next month. So Chapter 174, paragraph 1 is construction and repair of sidewalks. Any further comments or discussion on that paragraph?
I had asked Sean about whether up to code sidewalks could be made of slate or brick or bluestone these days, as it states in the first sentence. And Sean, I think you were saying might be best practice to make it cement or pavement.
Well, DOT has specifications on either concrete or asphalt sidewalks. That being said, we can interpret that language and maybe just satisfy the dimensional requirements of the specifications, but not necessarily the material requirements. So that way, if somebody wanted to use pavers or flagstones, or if it's existing that way, I mean, obviously I would recommend, the best material to use for a sidewalk is concrete, for new installations. But I don't think that having somebody tear up existing bluestone is necessary as long as it satisfies the dimensional reveal and grade requirements that DOT specifies. So,
I would prefer if we not have asphalt on the list, because those tend not to last as long and you know, and frankly don't, you know, look very good when you've got, you know, nice concrete sidewalks and then you've got one property that has an asphalt sidewalk in between. I mean, for repair, yes, we're not gonna make them just like the Bluestone tear it out. If they can repair it and it's level, but for new sidewalks, I would prefer if it's, you know, if we say new sidewalks should be cement, then I think that would you know, cover any new sidewalks going in.
well, again, to be a little bit of a tech nerd here, it's actually concrete. Cement's used in concrete.
Wrong term.
So you want to change the language from cement, slate, brick, bluestone, or similar substance to concrete?
Yeah,
Mhm.
And Liz, it doesn't actually say pavement, so.
No, this language doesn't, but we do have not many, but some sidewalks that have been made out of asphalt and they don't last as long and frankly, you know, looks more like a middle of the road than like a, you know, pedestrian way.
Is there any objection to making that change? So we'll just change that list so that it reads concrete. And all new sidewalks will be concrete. And obviously repairing existing sidewalks is a different question.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything on paragraph 2, reimbursement for
Excuse me.
sidewalk?
There's the end of paragraph 1 is incomplete because we did not reach an agreement as to, I had sent around the sidewalk map, which was done by CDTC a number of years ago and actually mapped out where there are sidewalks. And recently, you know, the linkage grant steering committee, you know, assessed all the sidewalks. We have significant numbers of streets, particularly in the northern part of the village, that have no sidewalks. Basically, it's pretty spotty north of the Cateros. You know, some streets have a sidewalk and some have just a little bit. You know, particularly further north in Colonial Hills, there are no sidewalks except around the park. You know, do we want people having to put sidewalks in when they sell or transfer ownership?
I thought in February, we said that we were going to exempt Colonial Hills and any other neighborhood that it was determined did not have heavy vehicle traffic and did not have any sidewalks. And I thought we were going to make a list of those streets and insert it there.
Yeah, it's not that easy because we have some streets that have some sidewalk and some have them on one side and not on the other. You know, do we want to have a, you know, transfer of ownership and there's only one sidewalk on one side, of, you know, small piece on one side and a full sidewalk on the other? That's why.
Yeah, I think we're overthinking this. I think the simplest thing to do is just put in the language of the law that that there's a exemption from installing sidewalk if there's currently no existing sidewalk on either side of the particular street,
Okay,
its length. I think that's a simple way to define this.
okay.
You know, there are other problems. If I may, it's not, my observation is it's not just the northern end of town. There are certain things, because I went out and did with Mandy Ryder, the sidewalk survey in, you know, my own neighborhood, which is our own neighborhood, Chapman, Heritage Place, Hyde Boulevard. There are places where, like there's one place I know of where they're right where there's no sidewalk, the sidewalk on the other side. But right in this owner's property, right where the sidewalk should be or could be, they've planted 2 trees. So I think, how do you address that? Do we make the person take out the trees to put in a sidewalk? I mean, I think there has to be some, and the fact that there are trees there, beautiful trees, could affect, could be one of the reasons the person buys the house. And then they, find out that within a year, they have to tear up the trees and, put in a sidewalk. So
Well, if they can come up with a plan to go around the trees and still provide a minimum of 4 feet in width, and they could present that. If they feel
Yeah,
like
no,
they can't,
Specifies the location of the sidewalk.
yeah,
Well, but then the sidewalk might go into their property.
absolutely it will.
Yeah.
And there are places
well,
where,
isn't it already in their property? I mean, it's in their right of way, not ours.
No, the right of way is,
Depends on the street, actually.
Yeah,
It's an old village. We got lots of different.
you got a lot of
Right.
different configurations, like you have places where you have a telephone pole right where a sidewalk should be.
right. And again, if you could push it to the one side or the other temporarily to get a 4-foot clearance. I mean, it's done all the time. It's not, this is not an uncommon situation. Or you can have utility relocate the pole.
right,
Well, I'm not so much worried about the utility companies. I'm concerned about people, the individual property owner and the residents.
I mean,
think-
we have not enforced this requirement even under the old code.
No, we have not.
There are folks who have put stones and landscaping where there were folks who tore up existing sidewalks rather
Yeah.
than replace them.
Yeah, this is, obviously, this is something that they would have to be told ahead of time before they purchase. And they'd have to make that decision.
I guess I'm more concerned. I think the individual spots will resolve themselves one way or another. I'm more concerned about how we distinguish areas that we're not going to require sidewalks in.
Well, I think your suggestion of it's very clear, Colonial Hills is very clearly a subdivision. It's one specific, identifiable subdivision. So that,
Is this a comprehensive plan kind of item? Not to put this off forever.
Well, we've got the existing law and we're in the process of changing it, so we might as well get it the way we want it.
Liz brought up, and the conversation reminded me of potentially needing to put in that you're not allowed to take out sidewalks. I talked to someone actually on Chapman who said he was thinking of taking out a sidewalk so he wouldn't have to be responsible for it. And so that's always.
Yeah,
something.
I mean, there should be a provision in it that,
there should be.
yeah, you can't do that. That's prohibited.
Well, we might want to add that then.
Yes. Those people on Chapman Street, they're all rabid.
Okay,
Um,
how are we going to identify which streets are in that blank at the end of the paragraph?
Liz, I'm having a hard time reading your map, like where the sidewalks are and aren't on there. I don't know if you.
Map is, it's wherever there's that dark line, and we're, after the assessment, we'll have a better map of the sidewalks and their condition. When they finish looking at all the data that we just collected over the last week or two.
I guess I can't see I don't have your map pulled up, but can we identify the streets that have no sidewalk on them? Either side?
Or can we just say in that sentence, except for streets on which no sidewalks exist?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's pretty simple.
But I
Yeah.
guarantee you're gonna hear from folks on that because there are sidewalks that literally have one lot. I mean, streets that literally have one lot that's got a sidewalk on it.
Right, and I assume the idea, the thrust of this legislation is to fill in gaps on areas that have existing sidewalk.
Right.
So,
So if you have, so your point is, Sean, that if you've got one house with, as Liz says, with just a small amount of sidewalk and nobody else has it, that's not filling in a gap. That's filling in like 90+%.
right, well, I'm thinking filling in the gaps in the village infrastructure.
Right.
Okay, I see.
Everybody comfortable with that? Ready to move on to the next paragraph? Okay. Anything about paragraph 2, reimbursement for sidewalks?
Now we basically took the number out of the legislation and put it on a fee schedule, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I was just wondering, sorry, can you explain, it says whenever sidewalks are constructed on the streets of said village with the consent of the village clerk. So the clerk approves a plan, or how does that work?
I don't approve the plan. I issue the permit,
Okay,
and I give them the guidelines from our code book of what's acceptable for a sidewalk. And then, once they're done and they return the receipts to me, I contact Jeff, he goes out and measures, but no, I don't approve. I just issue the permit.
Shouldn't they get pre-approval of their plan, maybe from Jeff?
Probably by the building inspector.
Building,
Inspector, okay.
yeah, that should,
well, the other permits are the building inspector, right? The other permits, so is this a more simple project than other things that the building inspector doesn't have to see it ahead of time?
well, the building inspector, okays if you're gonna put a fence up, that's pretty simple. And that your materials are correct. So I think the building inspector, you should present your plan, and the materials you're gonna use and that to the building inspector and get a permit.
And then the building inspector would actually provide that permit as with other things?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then the building inspector could go out and when it's done, inspect it to see if they, because there are cases where I've seen sort of self-installed sidewalks that, were not done particularly well.
It seems to make sense to me to just begin and end with the building inspector, unless there's a reason not to. I was just confused by that.
I think the reason the clerk's in there is because of the reimbursement part. I
Right.
think we don't want them taking their receipts and filing for reimbursement with the building inspector. So I think that's the part that the clerk does.
So
But it would be simple enough to change the first line to building inspector and put in clerk in the sentence about the money.
Yeah, because that would be the last step of the process, reimbursement.
Right.
Now, it says here, whenever sidewalks are constructed, what about, what if you're just replacing something? You still have to get the permit, go through you're putting something in the exact footprint. You still have to go through the building inspector and get
In
the,
theory,
and repair, because some of the sidewalks we saw, needed significant repair.
The permits I issue are for repair, not new sidewalks.
Right, but I think we're looking at adding. No, I thought the code was for new sidewalk and not for repair. That's why we had somebody come where they repaired it and they wanted reimbursement. I think it's the reverse.
Yeah, the original language was for construction of new sidewalk, not repair or reconstruction.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
it
why
says
I
now.
sent along to everyone a set of definitions. I don't know if anybody saw that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
probably
Oh.
should be.
Well, this paragraph starts with whenever sidewalks are constructed.
yeah, that's So I think we have to clarify that it's construction, repair.
The
Okay.
title says construction and repair on 174-1. So we do want to cover both circumstances.
Yeah.
Well,
Are we reimbursing for just new construction or construction and repair?
I think we should reimburse for repair in order to incentivize repair their
We do
sidewalk.
currently.
Okay, so I'll just change it to whenever sidewalks are constructed or repaired on the streets.
Well, we're not paying for all new construction, are we?
no,
No,
Right.
if you don't have a sidewalk and you put one in, the original code says we'll pay you this amount. And now we're adding, if you have a broken sidewalk and you're gonna need to repair it, we'll also, and we have to figure out how much we reimburse. It wouldn't be the same as a brand new sidewalk.
Right.
Wouldn't?
but that's for later. That's for the fee schedule after the log.
Okay.
Yeah.
approved. Anything else on that paragraph? Paragraph 3, obstruction of streets. I noticed that in our February discussions, we said we would allow bicycle racks and sandwich signs. And those have been removed in this version. Is that because we assume they're going to be covered in the new section and therefore we don't need to speak about them here? Okay. That's okay with me. Anybody else got anything on that paragraph?
No, it's just that you can put something on the sidewalk, but you have to have a permit in order to.
Right.
I think that's the way, it's a good way to handle that.
Okay, paragraph 4, permission required. Anything on that one? Paragraph 5, removal of snow, ice, dirt, enforcement and liability. I think we spent a lot of time on that one. We're probably done with that.
I
Anything?
think we did that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Next paragraph, notice of remedy removal, village costs. Anything in that section, paragraphs 1, 2, or 3?
Something caught my eye. I don't know what paragraph it is. 4 times the cost. Oh, there
Yeah.
it is.
Yep. That's if they don't clear their sidewalk, that's current practice. If they don't clear their sidewalk, we notice them, give them a 24-hour notice. They still don't clear their sidewalk. We send out the village crew or hire somebody, either of which we could do, to go out and clear that sidewalk for us, for them. Then we send them a bill for 4 times the cost. It's pretty blatant to have gone through all those steps and still not cleared your sidewalk.
There's one issue that's actually covers this code, but is also broader in some of the other codes. We have in the past only enforced codes when somebody complains.
Yes. And that's what it says in the first line of B1, in the event of a complaint received.
I don't know. I have a
I'm gonna
problem.
go out and be at sidewalk patrol continuously all winter. But if somebody tells me there's a problem, I'm happy to respond.
Yeah, on the snow issue, I could see that. Although I think frankly, if DPW sees it not cleared, then they should, call Terry, whatever, and say, this one isn't, because we're trying to provide access to the public on sidewalks. And if, nobody complains, then that sidewalk is still blocked.
Well, if nobody complains, then presumably they're not inconvenienced and they don't care.
It's putting the onus on somebody to complain. And I think that I have a problem with that. I think the public should not have to complain. And a lot of people just don't feel comfortable doing it. If they're violating the code and DPW in plowing the streets and stuff notices it, then they should, they could have a pad of paper. 28 Chapman, whatever, has not. And then is, have a notice.
I don't think that requires changing the language in the code. I think it just requires me to ask DPW to do it.
I guess that's fine. It's just that, yeah,
I think what it help is perhaps increased public awareness and, whether we facilitate that through the website, during meetings, during the winter months, and say, hey, if you see a problem, you see a sidewalk that goes for days without being cleared, please notify us.
right.
I'm pretty sure I put that in my letter last winter,
Yeah,
and will continue to. But yeah, you can look for other places to post it.
Yeah, I don't think it's asking that much for DPW to know where sidewalks are blocked, because they're out plowing. They see it.
Yeah, but right after the storm, they're out plowing. People have 24 hours to move the snow, and then they have
Well-
another 24 hours to notice them. So DPW is not going around the whole village continuously all winter. They're just going out right after the storm.
Well, they're out.
I still don't mind asking them to pay attention when they are out.
Right.
Want to change the language to in the event of a notification received for the failure of the owner. That way the notification could be DPW, it could be a complaint from a citizen, it could be one of you mentioning that, and then you've changed the language to notification as opposed to complaint, which has a different connotation.
Excellent.
Works for me.
Very
Yeah,
good.
works for
Thank
me.
you.
Okay. All right. Anything else on chapter 174? Good. Well, we'll look forward to getting the next version draft from the attorney by email whenever she has it ready for us. And hopefully we're done with that now and can move on to the additional language that we want to add on sidewalk cafes and vending.
I'll
At our next
take
meeting.
a look at the streets and the sidewalk map and see, if there are ones, which ones, are clearly not going to, be in the law. And then I can bring or circulate to the rest of you ones which might be questionable.
Good, thank you. All right, next item of old business is to continue our discussion of the cannabis law. If there's anybody here in attendance tonight who wasn't here last time, New York State passed a law that allows sales and on-site consumption of cannabis products, and localities can opt out of either or both. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Is everybody else? There's some noise coming from somewhere. Now it stopped. Localities can opt out of either allowing sales or allowing on-site consumption or both by December 31st. The benefit to the locality is a 3% local sales tax because we are in towns. If the towns did not opt out, we would have to share that 3% with the towns. If the towns opted out, we'd get the whole 3% ourselves. If we opted out, the town would get the business and the whole 3% themselves. So we have received requests from residents that we opt out. We've received recommendations from our financial staff that we do not opt out and accept the local income tax. And we don't have to make a decision tonight, but if anybody wants to say anything further that we haven't thought about tonight, please do.
If,
Go ahead.
Yes,
is there,
Trustee Baskin.
sorry.
Oh, I raised my hand. The town of Ballston actually had a survey, an online survey that it did that I thought might not be a bad idea to do here. And it actually, in the intro, it said 4%. So do we know it's 3 and not 4? They said 4. So I don't know who's right, who's
There's
wrong.
another 1%, I think, that goes to the county. I think that's where they're getting the 4.
All right. So, but I don't know the results of that, but it basically asked very quickly, are you okay with, well, it's town of Ballston, so they can actually grow marijuana in the town of Ballston. Are you okay with dispensing? And there's, within that, there's, I forget what they call it, but places where you can actually smoke inside. And then there's dispensaries where you buy a product and bring it home. And so those are two different kinds of stores or businesses. And so I thought that would not be a bad idea. I'll just give you my 2 cents. I am okay with some businesses being allowed to open, but it has to be a limited number and in the right location. If we can control that adequately, I'd be okay with trying that. And it's
I think
interesting in that
it's the number. We can certainly control the state controls the number. We can certainly control the location.
in the town of Ballston had a comprehensive planning workshop today or series, and the Chamber of Commerce head there said that in the future it'll be sort of like a wine store or other kinds of amenities that people will come to expect when they come to a location, and that in the beginning it's sort of this hyped up thing, and there's more sort of interest in it, but then this is the experience in Massachusetts. It becomes sort of more or less like any other business. So that's what the head of the chamber said, but I haven't done a lot of my own research yet. Thank you.
Somebody else
Yeah.
was to talk.
Yeah, my thoughts on this is if we are going to opt out or curtail or prohibit this, I guess I'm saying this, I mean, we already allow the use of drugs within the village, right? We have bars, we have a smoke shop, tobacco is a drug, alcohol is a drug. If you want to, I don't understand why we would prohibit one but not the other. So, I mean, I don't have any issue with, if a store approaches us and wants to be a dispensary or have a lounge on the premises, I don't see an issue with that.
Well, this is a situation where it automatically goes into effect unless we take action to stop it. So
Yeah.
if we simply take no action, then it's allowed.
I just have a clarification. Is it just up to us if it goes to a referendum, or, if enough citizens want it to go to a referendum, is it similar to the,
I don't know if our attorney knows any more about that than I do, but I'm not aware of any provision for referendum in this law. I think it's just our decision.
our decision? I have no problem with it. I feel actually the places where people, use the substance, I think may be a positive because, they're not in the street, the parks or whatever using. There's a place to go and it brings business in for that establishment. So, and it is a revenue source, and, I've visited the places in the Netherlands, you take the tour, they show you the shop, and it's, it's no big deal. And actually their overall utilization went down when they legalized cannabis, so.
I'm agree generally, and I'm not opposed to either the dispensing or the use. We can, however, still, as you said, we can control where the
Zoning.
state will decide. We can control, the state will decide how many, and they've made it clear they're not going to allow 10 in a, or 5 in a very close quarter. We can still regulate it as we can alcohol and cigarette smoke. Can we not on public streets and public parks and that kind of thing? And I think
Sure.
that we definitely should do.
I do believe, though, that if we regulate the smoking, it has to be the same rules for tobacco as for cannabis.
Right.
So if I don't know, we don't currently prohibit smoking in the parks, do we?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so we,
I
Well-
do think we should look at where we allow and restrict smoking. I think
Yeah.
that would be a prudent thing to do.
Right, overall. I also think we should do some education on what the law does and does not allow. Like, I think this is one thing, and I'm going to speak to the library board tomorrow, where I think we have a board meeting where they could do an actual education about what the law says and what it doesn't say, and, what can be regulated, because I think, this is a new thing, and I think that there's a lot of, fear and concern about it.
Okay, well, I think that is pretty clear direction. So I'm just not going to put this back on the agenda unless somebody comes up with something at a later point. We've got until December 31st.
Do we need
And-
to look at zoning in terms of location and restrictions? Is there any?
Well, we're looking at zoning anyway.
right, but
Well, this is I don't know if the timing lines up or if we need to look at this separately.
Yeah, I would have to check the timing of when this goes into effect.
right,
I know it's not this year.
It seemed to me, as I recall reading it, that it wasn't going to actually be effective until 2023.
Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah,
as
yeah,
far
so we might actually finish our zoning
add it
before.
to the zoning list.
Yeah. All right, next item is continue our discussion of dog poop. I reviewed the history of this, and our attorney, I don't know whether she sent to everybody or just to me, sent me a summary of what we did last year. And what we did last year is we passed a local law turning all aspects of animal control over to the towns and eliminating our animal control function entirely. Both towns have regulations on this issue. Both towns say it's illegal. Both towns provide mechanisms and penalties. So we really removed ourselves from this issue. The reason it's coming to us, obviously, is that it's one of those things that's virtually impossible to control because you have to see it happening. And the towns are not going to be able to accomplish that no matter what their laws say, but neither would we, to be honest with you. I mean, who are we going to have on every street at every moment watching every dog? So I
Yeah,
think I'm satisfied with the fact that we have already acted on this subject and passed it off to the towns.
Yeah,
in the terms of public awareness, would it make sense that maybe posting a sign of whatever the particular law is and the fine sporadically throughout the neighborhoods would, maybe have an impact that people know there's actually a fine associated with it? Because I'm sure people don't think there's any repercussion. So, I mean, just a thought.
I wouldn't necessarily put the whole law. You could do something very short, like please pick up after your pet, $100 or whatever the fine
Yeah.
is for.
Yeah.
violators.
yeah, I've seen those in other municipalities. I did see one on Facebook that says free yoga lessons, bend over, pick up your dog poop. I thought that was cute.
Yeah. But I mean, that may be the next step in the process. If it, because obviously it's continuing to happen, even with those regulations in place. So I guess that our thoughts are we going to try something else to address it? Or do you feel like we've done enough?
We've abdicated.
Yeah,
Yeah, I get that we've abdicated. I think we might, though, provide some direction to people. Like, and I worry about signage, like sign pollution. We have so many, like every couple of feet, no parking, 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, all of that stuff. I understand that we abdicated, but I think we should be telling people, what they can do about this. If they if they see somebody, you know, this is the age where everything is on video, that if they're in the town and they see somebody fail to pick it up, then they can notify the town of Milton. If they're in the town of Milton, or notify the town of Ballston. I mean, I think we have to do some education about what their recourse is.
Excuse me.
I guess, but, I mean, I think it would be good, you know, maybe some sort of informational campaign to make people aware that there is a law in place and there's a fine associated with it. And perhaps that would help. I think trying to have people quickly take a photo of somebody and make sure they get their face so they can be identifiable, that they, you know, left dog feces somewhere. I think that's going to be difficult.
Well, I think it's not, I mean, given the fact that people don't even like to complain about, you know, lack of snow removal, I think it's unlikely that people will, you know, will do that. But I do think that that telling people that there is recourse, I think is, I mean, it's all a matter of education. I mean, I don't know if it should be,
Exactly.
if it could be in Larry's letter the next time he writes a letter.
Right.
Just made myself a note to do that.
Thank you.
Appeal to people's better nature.
Right, maybe it could be,
Please.
maybe it could be on something on the website, you know, just a paragraph, you know, and saying, if, depending upon where you live is where you can make a, you know, complaint, should you.
You know, it could be simply as to co-opt the current phrase, see something, say something.
Yes,
Yeah, see something, say something, either to the mayor or to the person who's leaving it there, and tell them, you know, you can't do that. There's a law against that.
mhm.
So,
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. Thank you. The next item is very quick because we're going to delay the public hearing and the legal ad until we have these 4 things all wrapped up. But I just want to have the first reading of local law number 4 of 2021, which does nothing but change the date of the term of office from December 1st to January 1st. So currently we have our elections in March and the term of office starts April 1st. We passed a resolution several months back to change the election date to November to coincide with the general election dates. That automatically changed the term of office to December 1st, but NICOM recommends to all villages that they change it to January 1st in case there's an election mishap and an extended resolution. So this law simply changes the date of our terms of office from December 1st to January 1st. And the next election will be November 2023. And the next set of terms would start January 1st, 2024. So there will be a public hearing on this, but it won't be at the next meeting. It'll be a couple of meetings down the line. And that brings us to new business.
Do you want to make a motion?
Make a motion to do what?
It says
You
motion.
want to make a motion to approve the budget transfers?
No, I mean, to do what you just said about.
No,
changing-
No, not till after the public hearing.
Oh, okay. Because it's
Okay,
not-
new business. Could I have a motion to approve the budget transfers?
so moved.
Motion by trustee Raymond. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by trustee Baskin. Any discussion?
One of the questions I asked Julia was why there was large transfers from CE to personnel and on snow removal, you know, streets and she said
Yeah,
we had under budgeted on personnel.
I think she understated the issue. I think it's true that there was not enough budgeted as there should have been, but what really hit us was the retirements. and people taking all the accumulated sick, vacation, comp time payouts. So
Okay.
those came out of those lines because we didn't have them budgeted anywhere. So I think that was the main source of error.
Are we expecting more of that this coming year?
I think we budgeted for it this year.
Okay, good.
Any other discussion? All in favor of approving the budget transfers, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Could I have a motion that Reshop for the Good be authorized to hold their anniversary celebration at 132 Milton Avenue and utilize the parking lot? Proof of insurance and COVID safety plan have been provided to the clerk.
I'll
Is
make.
there a motion by
I'll make
trustee
that motion.
Patrick? Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by trustee Cormos. Any discussion?
I guess I'm curious, just not necessarily germane to this, but in general, what is the new COVID practices? My understanding is if you're outside, you don't need to wear a mask anymore. If it's an outside event, you just need to socially distance
If you've been vaccinated.
Yeah, if you've been vaccinated.
if you've been
And-
vaccinated.
And there's the separation of distance. I believe
Right, the social distancing still applies.
It is.
Yeah.
Any
Okay,
other
that's
discussion?
curious.
Okay. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. That motion carries. Could I have a motion that the Ballston Spa Lions Club be authorized to conduct concerts in the park in the Iron Spring Park on July 11th and 25th and August 15th with rain dates of the following week from 6 to 8 p.m. Proof of insurance and a COVID safety plan have been provided to the clerk.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by trustee Baskin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Raymond. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. That motion carries. Could I have a motion that the Saratoga Balloon and Barbecue be authorized to conduct their event at the fairgrounds August 27th through 29 from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. Proof of insurance and COVID safety plan will be provided to the clerk closer to the event and before the permit is issued.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by trustee Raymond. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Cormos. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. That motion carries. Next item of new business is a discussion of the parking situation on West Street. Trustee Cormos asked me to put this on the agenda, so I will let her introduce it to us.
Yes, I've received a number of notices from residents on West Street about two issues. One is speeding on the street, and the other is trucks going through. There is currently no sign that says no trucks, so I believe the residents would like to have a no trucks sign to prevent large trucks from using that. The other thing is currently there is parking allowed only on one side of the street. And the residents would like to see parking allowed on both sides of the street, the effect being to narrow the drive, the driving lanes with parking on both streets. Of course, you'd have to verify that there's sufficient width. I looked at it. It looks like there would be if there was parking, but I'm not a transportation engineer. So
Yeah, there is not sufficient width. I knew that this aspect of this was going to come up, so I asked DPW to go up and measure it, and it's 30 feet wide curb to curb, which is enough for 2 travel lanes and 1 parking lane, but not enough for 2 travel lanes and 2 parking lanes.
that's then they can't, use that as a solution. Potentially with, although it doesn't cover that area, but with the pedestrian master plan, there'll be examples of how you could put, a bike lane, and I don't believe there's sidewalks up both sides of West. I have to look, but there could be a walking path that would be narrower than a parking space. That could help there. But I guess then, given that circumstance, if we could make that street no trucks, at least that would help one issue.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. I'm not sure if we have signs left from the batch that we ordered last year, or if they'll have to be reordered. I'll have to check.
Did we put up the new ones? I haven't seen
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Do we know where the trucks will go, or is there gonna be some kind of impact on other streets unintended? Are there better streets for the trucks to go on?
They're already prohibited from all village streets. There's just no
Oh.
sign on that street saying it. So, yeah,
they-
we probably.
So they'll need to
should-
go up Route 50 and over on North Line or something. if they
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. Yeah, we know what
67.
the issue is. I think all the villages and towns with this issue should lobby Google or whoever the mapping people are to add the no trucks to their GIS system. That would solve the problem probably nationwide.
Yeah, it probably would.
If you put a no truck sign in West, you might want to put it on South Street if there isn't one, because that's where they'll go next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll turn that part of it over to DPW. Figure out where the trucks are coming from and put one there.
And you're right, Liz, when I went and looked at it, and I don't think there's sidewalks on either side, so that's having some kind of a path with the master plan linkage study should help.
That might narrow the,
Mhm.
All right, next item of business is a discussion of tenants' rights, and Trustee Raymond asked for that to be on the agenda, so I will turn that over to him.
Again, I sent you basically a rough draft earlier in the week for you guys to take a look at. The main thrust of tonight's discussion would be basically getting sign on from the other, mayor and the other trustees. And then I think the next step would be to have our attorney review the language and, make any changes or amendments as necessary. And then perhaps discuss it, more in detail in the next meeting and put it on the agenda. Because I don't know if everybody's had enough time to fully review it.
Can I ask where this came from?
It was patterned after another village. And I can't think of the location off the top of my head right now.
So other municipalities actually have things like this?
Yeah, it's generally more urban areas, more urban municipalities. I mean, a lot of it seems self-evident. However, I think it's important that we make it clear that, that the renter has these rights and they can't be curtailed by the property owner. I think that's important.
I think a couple of things, and then I'll shut up and let other people think for a while. One, I think these things are covered by state laws, so they shouldn't be necessary to be repeated in local laws. And number two, in my 2 years of being mayor, I have never had a single complaint from a renter about a landlord. I have in the recent past had numerous complaints from landlords about not getting paid their rent and not being able to evict their renters, but I have not had any complaints from renters about landlords. So
I would imagine you
this is
wouldn't.
necessary because I think it's covered by the state, and I don't think it's a problem that we are dealing with, other than the one outstanding lawsuit that we're all aware of, which probably makes this a really bad time for the board to be talking about this anyway.
Well, I don't know why it would be a bad time to talk about people's rights. I'm not sure about that, but I guess, I know there's a current lawsuit regarding political canvassing on multi-unit properties. But isn't that because there wasn't a clarification whether that was legal or illegal? And wouldn't it be better to make that clarification?
That's what the court's gonna tell us.
Okay, so you
And
think
then
that
we'll
we
know.
should put this on hold until whenever that becomes resolved?
I do personally, yeah.
I
Okay.
think there's a concern that there's an outstanding issue and you're circumventing the courts by passing a law that when there's an issue that's in the process of being adjudicated. And honestly, I feel like the legal analysis being undertaken by the court is probably superior to the 5 lay people on this board weighing in. And when I looked at this, Sean, I was like, okay, I don't know a ton about constitutional law. I haven't, taken that class for more than 2 decades. And it's not something that's, typically in our wheelhouse here. But those rights are protected by both state and federal laws. And I feel like, we either need some really expert opinions on this proposal, or we should, do what you're talking about with many other things here, which is educate people about the existing rights that they already have at the state and federal level, and leave it to the state and feds to be dealing with the issues as they arise. I feel like we're solving a problem that has other remedies, and I'm just concerned about the village's resources and expertise on this particular issue.
Well, I don't have an issue with if we want to wait until there's some ruling on that, current litigation, and whatever the outcome is. I mean, we can adopt at that point. I'm fine with that.
Great.
I would be interested to know if it is conceivable to be within the purview of the village to pass a law such as this, which would just clarify for everybody rights and remedies for this situation, at least at our village level. You're right. I don't know if it's within the purview of a village to pass this kind of law or not, but I think also it is unclear. It seems to be unclear at the state level where the people aren't sure what rights are. I mean, we'll know this one instance of litigation. I don't know if that establishes anything legally for the next time or not. I guess it helps. But I'd be interested to know if if a law like this is possible even at the village level. Like if you could research that maybe.
Well, we asked NICOM, and NICOM refused to touch with 10-foot pole. They said essentially what Stephanie said, they said they have no expertise, they have no opinion, they're not gonna even tell us whether they think we can do it.
Yeah, they said they couldn't even weigh in on whether it was constitutional to pass this. And so with them having that hesitancy, I'm feeling really uncomfortable making a recommendation to you that I think that you're able to do this. And, we're not going to be able to get the expertise, I think, easily for an issue that doesn't seem maybe quite as pressing as some of your other issues within the municipality. I would say if you're comfortable waiting for the court to hand their ruling down, then we can take a look at the ruling, see what it says and whether it's applicable, and then restart this discussion.
Yeah, I guess my only concern is we may not have any clarification until the next time this legislation would become relevant, which would be the next election cycle. So that's my concern. Perhaps we can kick this can down the road, and if we don't see anything happening, we can revisit it.
Well, the litigation should hopefully resolve before that. So that'll be a little more information.
One would hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that one of the reasons there is this litigation is because there is this lack of clarity. So, I don't think it's that clear that if it was clear that there was you had state and you had federal rights, we wouldn't have the litigation, we wouldn't have the problem. So I think that we do at the least once the litigation is resolved, is we need to, I don't have any problem. I think we should look at this because we do have 48% of the people who live in the village of Ballston Spa are renters.
And Sean, that model law came from another state, right? I believe.
Yeah,
And that's part of the problem here. I did some research over the weekend because, again, it came in. It was something that was a surprise to me. And so I started researching and came upon a law review article that was written, I think, 4 years ago. And it was saying that the laws of each state are a little bit different. They're nuanced. Some of it is fact-based and dependent upon that. So there's an overlay between the federal and the state and the specific facts in each instance. So I don't think it's an easy issue. And I don't know that us passing a law that may or may not pass constitutional muster makes things better or worse for the village. So, say we're wrong on our analysis. We pass a law that is unconstitutional. Now we're involved in a lawsuit that's going to take significant resources on behalf of somebody who can find their own remedies, as opposed to the village taking something, say, to the Supreme Court of the United States. What's that going to cost? $200,000, $500,000? I'm not sure we want to tackle this fight where the law is just unclear in some circumstances, and part of this is fact-based.
all right. Well, I mean, it sounds like there has to be some research done. And, perhaps the way we can approach this is we'll obviously wait to see the outcome of the current litigation. And based on that, I guess we could make certain decisions about it at that point. And if there doesn't seem to be a conclusion to that litigation by the next election cycle, then I guess we're going to have to pick a period of time ahead of it where we can do some research and try to come up with a determination, one way or the other. And I realize the courts are swamped, but things take years to be resolved. And unfortunately, I don't think we have years to wait for this to be resolved.
Okay, thank you all for your input. Let's move along to the next item. I think I sent everybody a copy of this, but I can't remember for sure. I got a letter in the request from I think it was the county gay pride organization, requesting that the village fly a pride flag in June in celebration of Gay Rights Month, or whatever it's called. And I think I forwarded it to you.
It did.
Did you all see it?
We did see it, yes.
So what's your pleasure? Shall I comply? They volunteered to provide the flag. They're just asking us to fly it for the month of June. Is that something that you would like the village to do?
If I am supportive of that, I think it's a very good idea. I would just like and it's good of them to provide the flag. I think what we want to do is we want to place it someplace that is, I don't know how to put this, but public. In other words, I think it should be in front of Village Hall, or it should be in Wiswall Park. Because I think what we don't want is the shenanigans that went on last year in Milton. And I think part of that was because in at least one location, the flag was someplace where it wasn't, where people could tamper with it. It was not, it wasn't clear who had done it. So I think it's got to be placed. I would prefer that it be placed in a very public place where tampering with it would be, pretty obvious.
Thank you. Other comments?
I agree with Christine. It should be placed in a, spot where, people have eyes on, because, there was the incident. Milton flew it last year, and I believe is going to do so again this year. And I think we should too.
Okay.
I agree.
I
Okay.
agree.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Moving on, the next item of business is the discussion of the RFP for a consultant to do the comprehensive plan. And I want to compliment and thank Trustee Cormos for her work in facilitating this. I think it's an excellent document, does a very good job, and I'll let her introduce it to us.
Well, I sent it to everybody, and have gotten a lot of good comments, also from John Cromie, chair of the Comprehensive Plan Committee. I think it's pretty comprehensive. It lays out a process whereby we can get to zoning in the 2 areas of town that have the most development potential, and in a timeline, quicker than the completion of the, a complete comprehensive plan. It sort of has, it goes through the initial stages of getting the public input on the vision of the future of Ballston Spa over the next 5 to 10 years. That would cover, all the topics of a comprehensive plan. But after that point, after getting the public input, there would, be a branch off to, concentrate on those 2 areas and discuss them first, and get to the point where we could be presented an amendment to our existing comprehensive plan and get that passed. Meanwhile, the committee would continue its planning work on all the other sections of town, all the other topics on the comprehensive plan, and the consultant would work with the board to propose code changes that would reflect the public input for those 2 areas. The area being the sort of central business district around Angelica, around this area that we believe has a lot of development potential, and then the area that has the nursing home. What might happen is that there'll be a new district that might be less smaller than the existing district to cover just that area. And I think that process, with this expedited kind of process, we can get to zoning that will let developers know what it is the community supports, what they want there, and get us to where we want to go. And then,
Excuse me, I did have 2 questions. If you're ready, I was wondering about the recommendations provided by CDRPC, and then I saw that they came in this afternoon around 5 or 6 or something. And I looked at them, and they're quite lengthy, 80 pages or something like that. So I certainly didn't do a thorough job of digesting any of it, but that's going to be the link on page 6. And
what
I'm
CDR
concerned that when I actually do have time to read those 80 pages, there might be something in there that's going to make me think that something in here needs to be changed.
I don't believe so. Those 80 pages are existing conditions. This is normally the first step in a comprehensive plan when you hire, a consultant or you're doing comprehensive planning, is to get all the information on where you are today. And so that is what they have completed for us. I provided, they gave us a whole list of information that they wanted. We got, the plans of the water system and the sewer system and they accessed existing data on us, like traffic counts, etc., put in our zoning map. So all of that is where we are today. This is the description. It is not any recommendations. It's the existing conditions, which then the consultant will take and start the public process. So there, essentially, we got the first step done with them. So that,
Yeah, I was confused by the fact that its title includes and recommendations. So,
well, I haven't read it either because it came in this afternoon, but that's would be recommendations to the committee, and we need the public input before any recommendation would be implemented. And that
Okay.
really will be the job of the consultant to work with the committee and resolve what do people want in the village.
And if that turns out not to be the case and there is an issue that arises, I do note that you've allowed us to renegotiate this scope of work after the contract is awarded anyway. So if there is anything in there that causes us to change our minds, we're covered. My other question is on 10 under the tentative schedule. Who's the selection committee?
That would be the comprehensive plan committee. Under
Okay.
John Comey.
Okay,
So that would be their task. The consultant will work with that committee.
okay. You had referred to that committee elsewhere in this document as the something else. So I didn't recognize that you were talking about the same thing here.
Yeah, no, in the.
Steering committee, you called it.
Did I?
Steering committee.
Oh,
I think so.
I think, what's the official name of the comprehensive plan? I thought it was steering committee. I'll double check what we have it listed as the name, but that's the committee. That everywhere in the document where it says committee, it means the comprehensive plan committee that was appointed.
Okay.
We're
All
not
right. Thank you.
any other groups.
Maybe just change that one word to whatever the word is that's used in the rest of the document.
Okay, I'll
Just-
look at that.
Yeah, thanks. That's all I had. Anybody else?
No. Just-
Okay,
It's a very good document. Much
Yeah.
appreciated.
Thanks for doing it. You got a bunch of my comments. Did you send something out more recently?
Yeah,
With
good. She sent out a revision,
revision, so,
a red line.
yeah, I sent out a one that showed the difference between the one dated on the, I think, the 7th and this one, which actually is dated on the 11th, because I thought we, might send it out. As soon as I verified with Julia that everything is on the website, then we, we did get the existing conditions. Once that gets up on the website, then we can send it out to consultants.
It wasn't up yesterday. I checked. I don't know if she got it up today or not, but
Yeah, well, I'll make sure it's up before anybody gets this, so they don't go on the website and not find those references.
good. All right, then could I have a motion to approve this RFP for the consultant to oversee the development of the new comp plan?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by trustee Fitzpatrick. Is there a second?
Second,
Second by trustee Raymond. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
aye,
All opposed, nay.
I'd also like to thank CDRP,
Motion carries.
Kate Maynard. She spent a lot of time on the phone and gave us a lot of direction on how to handle this RFP.
Thank you. Next item of business is trustee liaison reports. Are there any trustees who have reports for us tonight?
I did go to a BACC, Ballston Area Community Center board meeting, and they're actually having some, they don't have as high a demand currently as they have historically because a lot of people are staying home still. So and take care of the kids at home. So we're going to see how that all pans out. We talked to the board was not completely familiar with the ice skating rink plan, whether that or how that was happening and how costs would be distributed. And I encouraged Kathy to come up with a list of questions that she and the board members have about how it would be implemented. So I haven't received that yet, but hopefully she'll be sending it along. And I'm waiting on the director of the BARC to send us wording to promote. They're looking for coaches for soccer, and also they need a representative on their board from the village of Ballston Spa. So if anyone's interested, and thanks, Mayor, for allowing that to be on the website. I'm just waiting on wording from them to put on the website.
Yeah. As far as the skating rink, do you know Amy Jenkins?
I know that. Yeah, I know that. I don't know her well, but
She's the one who has been coming to me with these issues and communications ever since the fall. So I have asked her to meet me over there and look at that site and talk to Kathy about the potential for doing this. And it's never quite happened for whatever reason. If you know her and felt like giving her a call, I'd be happy to walk over there with you if you want, or you could walk over there with her and get Kathy in on it and probably help move this along. Because I think what's happening is nobody's been talking to anybody.
right.
I've been
All right,
I've been trying to get everybody together and it hadn't worked.
All right, I'll help move it along. They were not
Great.
sure if Liz's idea of parking, it is somewhat of a narrow access point in there, and they were skeptical about the ability of cars to turn around safely in that space. So that just, it's an interesting idea. It's not clear if it's feasible. I don't know if DPW can weigh in or not, but I'll try to get the communications going.
Good, thanks.
Could I ask a question? And this is related to the ice skating rink, so I'll talk quickly. The building, I know that we're considering moving the ice skating rink because of insurance and liability issues with the school in terms of the property where the ice skating rink currently is. Who owns the building there by the ice skating rink?
I don't know. I assume the school district owns
I think
it.
it's all
Property.
Yeah, it's all school stuff.
Unless they have some kind of special deal with the rec commission that allowed the rec commission to build their building on school property.
I'm pretty sure it's all school property.
I know it's school property, but
No, I mean the building. I'm pretty sure the buildings are school property as well. But I can double check.
Yeah, I'm not. I just remember seeing something where there was something with the village building or contributing to building that space, and I don't think it's so clear that it just belongs to the school. So I would like to. I just don't know how to verify that. That would be helpful.
So what is the issue? Why does the skating rink have to move?
They're going to build a building. I was told it is a school building that they're building on the space that the ice skating rink is.
So it's not necessarily the insurance or liability issue. It's because they want to use that piece. Because literally, I mean, I live across the street from the soccer field, so I see what goes on there. And you know, the ice skating ring has always been a popular destination there. The one area that I see gets used very little is where they have the swings. Even when they took the swings off for COVID, but when they had them, that end of the park at East High gets hardly used at all. You know, you may see one mother and a kid there at once. I would think that might be a better alternative site for, you know, an ice skating rink.
nobody said anything to me about a building in any of these conversations with the school district.
Right.
All they said to me was insurance and liability.
All about the liability, yeah.
But
All right, I'm sure it's all included. But as my understanding, I don't know what their timing is, but I think they are planning to put another building or structure of some kind on the Bark Field where the ice skating rink is.
maybe Ben, if you could find out exactly, is it a liability and is there something, I mean, we're going to be spending money to do something in the center of the village, with an ice skating ring, maybe if it means we have to provide some insurance or something, so that they can do it, it's might be worth looking at.
We'll have to provide some insurance for sure. If the liability issue was different with the school, they wanted us to, hold them totally harmless. It's going to be less, if we do something by ourselves at Bark as the village, it's going to be less complicated than the village and the school doing it together from a liability and insurance standpoint. That's all I'm saying.
But we are taking on kids using an ice skating ring, and that increases our liability.
Yeah, but we
Now they're
had
covered.
that before. We
We
just
did?
had it in a different place.
I can discuss with you later. That's a little confusing.
Okay, any other trustee liaison reports tonight? Going once? Going twice? Under other business. Did everybody think about Front Street the whole time we were talking tonight?
No,
No,
Is
I
it
was
me?
listening to you, Larry.
Is it okay for me to change our plan to two-way and just close off the parking areas of the two places that we know want to use their sidewalks?
No other restaurant wants to use their sidewalks. They don't want to stay outside.
They all didn't want us to do anything. They didn't want to lose parking. They didn't want us to close the street. They didn't want us,
well, I mean,
businesses that you're hurting our business.
if another restaurant wants to use, their parking spaces, I mean, that was, I think, one of the options, which said keep the two-way traffic and just let them
Yeah,
use their parking spaces. If it's only those two restaurants, I mean, we can revisit this. I would prefer if they put their tables in the parking space with a barrier and let people walk straight down the sidewalk. That's my preference.
Yeah.
I'll have to check with the state liquor authority on that.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the social club. I see their tables out across their whole sidewalk. I keep thinking, and of course we'll have to deal with it at the time, but I keep thinking that, we're not going to open up the parking spaces to dining, and then we're going to tell people you have to have 5 feet on the sidewalk, and then the light's going to dawn. But we'll deal with that, I guess, when it happens.
Right. Oh,
Obviously, what would be preferable is a straight linear path along the sidewalk. But again, if it's only going to be a couple isolated locations, I don't see an issue with diverting people into the parking area. I mean, they're going to lose their parking because there's going to be a pedestrian walkway there.
All right.
So, but I guess my other thoughts is it should be made clear to the other businesses that they need to, if they're not going to use their on-street parking, they need to maintain a 5-foot clear
Right.
path.
Right.
right.
And that's what I'm saying. The light's going to dawn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm thinking to make people and that have to deal with, think of somebody in a wheelchair trying to go down the street. They're gonna have to go down a ramp into basically the street, around and up a ramp. I think that's not ideal. I think a straight path is
Yeah, I've heard that. I've got notes. I'll check on it. I'll let you know if we can.
Okay.
Okay. Public comment. Time
Oh,
for public
Larry,
comment.
I added one thing for other business. If I may.
Is that essential? Did you get my email?
No, but it's just to approve the consultant for the tree grant.
Yeah, I saw that. It came out at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and the board has been very clear that they want materials in advance of the meeting so that they can read them. And so I sent you a reply email saying, is this an emergency?
Okay,
And can't wait until the next meeting, because 3 hours of advance notice isn't really long enough for the board to read it.
okay. Well, the Park and Tree Board, it's the Park and Tree Board's recommendation, and they did a very thorough job of evaluating the two.
Yeah.
consultants. So if it's necessary, we wait another 2 weeks.
Well, I did try to take a quick scan. I was trying to get to it, but I didn't. It was the last thing before the meeting, and I just ran out of time. But I was scanning through the preferred RFP, and I saw that the start date wasn't until July 1st. So we should be able to vote on it May 24th and still have them start July
The
1st.
the only concern I have is that we had 3 vendors who said they were already booked this year. And I'm afraid of losing our selected vendor. If I don't have a yes now, that in 2 weeks, they'll come back and say, sorry, somebody else took your spot. You know, the fact that they even scheduled us in July indicates that they're already, you know, their schedule's pretty booked. So that was my only concern, is if you know, I can say to the board that, you know, the Park and Tree did a very thorough job. It was clearly the preferred vendor of the two. And that vendor also came out with a lower fee as well. And we should be able to get the whole thing done under the 100% grant. So that's,
I think if it's I haven't read it. I think if it's non-controversial, the committee is basically unanimous. Liz is comfortable with it. It stays within the budget. I'm okay taking their word on who they recommend and moving forward, if it's important to move forward.
I think we have time. I'd like to read it. I haven't had a chance yet.
could we get I mean, once we say that we're gonna work with this contractor, we still have to negotiate a contract. So, I'd like to be able to call them and say, yes, we want to work with you, send us the contracts, etc.
Yeah, start that process and tell them all you're waiting on is a formality of board approval, because you didn't get it in time for this meeting.
Okay, yeah, as
Okay.
long as I can approach them with that there are selected consultant based on successful negotiation of a contract.
Yep,
And then-
works for me.
Okay,
That's-
Okay.
Mayor, are we going to talk about the job description or no?
No,
No, okay.
no. I didn't know anybody wanted to. I thought we were taking care of it in email, so I
okay.
don't even have the stuff here with me at home.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to public comment then, because we have 20 people who have been with us for 2 hours now, and that's a large number of very patient people, and I really want to hear their input. So I will call on Richard, whose last name does not appear. Talking is permitted now, Richard, but you have to unmute yourself.
I don't know what happened. I lost volume. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're on.
Okay, look, I don't know how this format works, if I'm supposed to make a speech here, if I'm supposed to
Please
just, I have,
Please give us your name and address.
yeah, my name is Richard Dorr. I live at 48 Front Street. Again, I'm not sure how this format works. I'm supposed to make a speech with my number of questions, or we're going to have a back and forth. So let me just ask you, as far as the shutdown of Front Street or the barriers, first of all, I'd have a question as to exactly how the barriers are going to be set up in front of Next Door Kitchen and Front Street Deli, and how far they're going to protrude out into the street. I think you need to clarify first, before you do anything, how the pedestrians are going to be able to pass. Is it going to be on the sidewalk? Are you going to force them to go around the barrier out into the street? How are you going to protect them? My second question is, my second question is, who's paying for this? Why would the village expend their resources and their money to pay so a private business owner can make profit? Makes no sense to me. Third, why are you doing this at all? The premise here is that financially you're trying to help the next door kitchen, and it's clear that it's Matt Hall and Chris Vignar who are behind the shutdown of the barriers now, as they were last year. So why are you doing this? The premise is to help them financially. You do know that Chris Vignar and Matt Hall's got over $600,000 in PPP loans. You watch them do a week's worth of renovations on the restaurant. You see them buy all brand new furniture, but you want the village to pay for the expense of putting a barrier up for them? It makes no sense to me. How financially hurting are they if they can do renovations on their restaurant and buy new furniture and got $600,000 from the PPP loan program? So what's the purpose of this at all? You need to determine how far those barriers are going to go into the street, how you're going to get people to pass one specifically before you do anything whatsoever. That's my comment. I'm one of the residents who feel that there shouldn't be any shutdown at all. If it serves a purpose, and I'm sympathetic. My son has a restaurant. He's going through the same thing. But if they're not financially hurting, why is the village going through this at all? Why does the public have to suffer? Why do residents have to be inconvenienced? That's my opinion on it.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the opinion. Let's see. I see. Having trouble with this thing. There we go. I see Richard Robichaud. You're allowed to speak, but you have to unmute yourself.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name's Rich Robichaud. I'm from 53 West Street, and I was one of the people who complained about the speeding and trucks and everything here. And since we can't remove the no parking signs on one side of the street because the street's too narrow, how about we just post some speed limit signs or reduce the speed, from 30 to 25. And we don't even have a speed limit sign on this road. And the no truck signs, I thought that was a good idea. Now, the other thing is about some caution children playing signs, just an idea. And then the other thing is about snow removal. I was the guy who complained, 63 years old, have a limited walking disability. I emailed you, I think twice. You responded.
I know your names.
And I took your advice. I went out and I walked up. I got all the addresses and I turned them into the village on the website. And I communicated on that at least 2 times that I can count. And I got no replies, nothing, no snow removal. And I was forced to walk in the road.
I'm very sorry to hear that. That surprises me. Madam Clerk, do you know anything about that website function?
Yes, that was forwarded on to the DPW.
It was forwarded to DPW? I apologize, Mr. Robichaud.
Well,
I will look into
it's
this.
okay. I understand. And we do have sidewalks on both sides, not quite going all the way up. And if you go all the way up to the northwest end of the road, you will see that the other streets have a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit sign right there at the intersection, but there isn't one for West Street. It's kind of weird that we don't have a speed limit sign. So I'd like to see if we could get the speed limit reduced. Maybe that would deter some of them
from speeding.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether we can or not. I was talking to DPW about that just the other day, and he was going to check for me and see whether we had that authority. So I'll get the answer to that question.
Well, thank you, sir. I do appreciate it, and I'm done.
Okay, thanks for coming and thanks for your comment. And I see Adam Woodard. And Adam, you're allowed to talk. You have to unmute yourself.
Hi, it's Adam Woodard, 48 West Street. Kind of on the same topic as Mr. Roberstrad. It's unfortunate about the no parking signs, but if that's not an avenue we can go down, I echo Rick's comments on the speed limit sign. A couple other suggestions, just in doing rudimentary research for traffic calming devices would be speed bumps. If that's a problem with snow plows, they do have speed bumps that can be bolted in and out seasonally. So you would at least have them in during the warmer months. Another option being one-way traffic, preferably away from the village, because most of the speeding that we've noticed is coming down the hill on West Street. You could have there's plenty of other streets to go around for the other direction toward town. And I think that's all I had. Sorry, one more option that I looked at was automated speed enforcement cameras. I don't know what the cost is on that, but it would probably be more advantageous than using one of our limited police officer resources and leaving them down on our road. That could be an option around the village also. So that's it.
Okay, great. Good suggestions. Thank you very much. And let's see. I see one other hand, and I'll recognize Frank Rossi. Where'd he go? This thing is not responding uniformly tonight.
I think you got me though. Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Frank Rossi Jr., 63 Saratoga Avenue, Apartment B in Ballston Spa. Just wanted to discuss what I could read into the discussion earlier that Stephanie participated in from Sean about tenants' rights, and just clarify a couple things that I think the community needs to understand better in general, because some of the press and whatnot that have come out are atrocious and inaccurate. So Stephanie, I appreciate your contributions to that discussion, and on a legal basis, you're absolutely 100% correct in some of your concerns, because I have attorney colleagues in my time as we over the years have crafted policies on our own property, or properties, I should say. Specifically, I think the concern from a couple of years ago was a trespass concern, and it is not our policy to limit political speech on our properties, at least. It is our job as landlords to ensure safety and what's called quiet enjoyment of our tenants. And so there is a balance that has to be done in that respect. From solicitations, recently we had been notified by a tenant of, I think, a meat salesman or somebody coming onto the property, and we couldn't get there in time to warn them off the property. And if they didn't leave, go for a trespass charge against them at that point. That is the policy. If you don't notify us ahead of time and have an escort while you're on the property in any kind of solicitation or political campaigning approach, then you're in a trespass mode, because we do have a mechanism by which you can do those things you need to do. Patty Southworth, who we did not agree with politically, followed those rules back when she was running for office. We had received a request from Joe Seaman, who was running against Mary Beth Walsh. Mary Beth Walsh herself, when she was handing out masks, the mask packets on our property early last year, she was required to have an escort as well, and she did. And Joe Seaman was offered this same situation when he made a request, although the policy goes on to say anybody that's violated the rules or threatened to menace can't be the person on the property, but still allows anybody else in the campaign to come on and do a lit drop or whatever. There's a balancing act here. And as Stephanie was suggesting, let's say you do pass some sort of law that would be violative of constitutional law, and you basically have curtailed our ability to run a kind of a funnel system for quiet enjoyment and safety purposes, and somebody gets hurt because somebody that doesn't belong on that property does something in the name of political campaigning or whatever else to a tenant. and then that law is found to be unconstitutional, then the village does get sued because it participated in preventing a certain safety mechanism from being in front of this whole situation. It is not our policy to prevent political campaigning. It is our policy to ensure we know who is on that property, if they have not been invited on that property, and to get somebody with them so that the tenants know that at least they've been approved and that they are safe to open their door and converse or whatever else has to happen in that situation. If you find that to be some kind of problem, I think you should go and revisit just what you put value in this situation. And Sean, Ben, I never received a request from you to go campaign, canvas, or whatever on that property or any property of the Rossies during the last campaign. So I was more than happy to issue the same letter I did to Joe Seaman to say, let's make an appointment, let's get it together, and we'll do it. And Seaman's came in late, and we still were going to try to make the best we could to get him on the property or whoever he had chosen, because he had made a threat on social media against us. But we still were willing to walk somebody else in his campaign around the property. I just wanted to clarify the record on that so that everybody understands, at least to the degree this was being pointed toward us, what our policies aren't, and what we are up to in this whole respect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi. We do have one other hand, and that is Bob Bush. Bob, you're on.
Hi, Bob Bush, 71 Church Ave. I want to thank the board for putting up the one-way sign up in front of Dr. Frugal's office parking lot on that one-way street. He's very grateful for that. Also, I got a couple things I want to mention here. I believe trustees should lead by example and are held at a higher standard because they make the important decisions for the future of our village. As to the sidewalks, I was wondering, during your survey, has anyone asked the village residents that if they want one in front of their house, that they have to maintain? So you're telling me that not having a sidewalk in front of their house in 40 plus years, now you're all of a sudden against their will going to make them maintain a sidewalk. One issue I see is an elderly person who can barely take care of their driveway, and now you're asking for them to maintain a sidewalk or face a violation. There's got to be something we can do to kind of accommodate those people, because there's a lot of them in the village. I took care of one. Also, I want to point out that as a trustee who was advocating this project had the option to install a sidewalk at their own cost when they recently had their house built, but declined, and is now hoping to have the village build one at no charge in front of their home. Is that really ethical? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. I see no more hands, so I will close public comment and thank those who spoke for their comments. Could I have a motion that vouchers number 21-01476 to 21-01987 be audited and the meeting adjourned?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by trustee Fitzpatrick. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Raymond. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries and meeting is adjourned. Thank you again, everyone, for your attendance, your interest, and your participation. And I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.